Hi, I'm Kate from Sew Into Overlocking and welcome back to the studio. This tutorial is specifically for baby lock owners. So I teach lots of hands-on classes and I find many students come to class not really understanding fully about the basic accessory feet that you can get for your baby locks. So there's a groove foot, a flat sole foot, clear foot, curve foot. And these feet are all fantastic and they all serve their own purpose. So today we're going to deep dive into all these different feet and where, why, and how to use them. So first of all, let's talk feet for the 4-thread models. So these are the Inspire, Eclipse, Imagine Wave, Acclaim, etc., etc. So it's also important when we're talking standard, grooved or clear feet that you do know which model you own, because some of the older models like the Eclipse and the first Imagines, the accessory feet are slightly longer. On the newer models, they are slightly shorter. With the other accessory feet, it doesn't matter. So gathering and piping, it doesn't matter which machine you own. But when you're looking at these feet, it's really important you know your model so you get the correct length foot for your machine. So the standard foot is a great multi-purpose foot. It also has a tape guide built into it. So it has that little gap in the front and through to the back. And it also has this grooved or cut out section underneath. So that is a huge advantage when you're wanting to gather a single layer of fabric, because what happens is the fabric pleats in underneath that groove and gives you a fantastic result. It also has the tape guide, which you can just slide your stabilizing tapes or narrow elastics straight through like that, place it on the machine, and that will then stitch the tape beautifully into the seams of your garments. Or elastics you can also stretch and create a fantastic stretch while you're sewing. Now, where this little groove can be problematic is if you're sewing very thick fabrics or sewing over intersecting seams of garments, so sewing in a shoulder or sewing over a crutch seam. The thicker layers can get trapped in that, and you can still work with it, but you just might have to work a little bit harder to get over those lumps and bumps. So that's where the flat sole foot is my preferred foot for just doing straight seaming. So you can see the difference between those two when you turn them over and have a look underneath. You have the groove on the standard foot and the flat sole foot is completely flat. So for everyday straight seaming, this is my preferred foot to use. And obviously if I'm wanting to gather a single layer or I need the tape guide, then I would be using the standard foot. Clear feet are fantastic if you need to see your work all the way up to the needles. So anytime you're working in the round, if you're adding cuffs or neckbands to things, these are a fantastic foot because you can see your starting and finishing point really, really easily. And this particular one is a grooved clear foot, so it works just like the grooved standard foot and has the tape guide built through the front as well. Now let's talk 8-thread feet. So these are for the Evolves, Ovations, Glorias, etc. So when you look at the standard and the flat sole foot on an 8-thread machine, from the top, they actually look identical. And this is where it can get really confusing. It's not until you turn them over that you can see the difference. And so this one is the flat sole version, and that one is the grooved version. So that is the one to use when you're gathering and you wanted to gather single layers of fabric. But for most straight seaming, I would use the flat sole foot. So for these ones, you actually have to turn them over to see the difference because they actually have a tape guide in both of these feet. So the same as I did with the 4-thread foot, you can take your tape or narrow elastic up through the top. You go through this section for the overlocking side, or if I was wanting to cover stitch tape or ribbon or anything on, I would feed it up through that side and instead go through here down to the cover stitch needles. So this keeps everything where you need it to be while you're working with it, depending which part of the foot you're working with. So clear foot, absolutely essential in my mind when you are doing cover stitch hemming, because you can see your stitches all the way up to the needles. Also great when you're working in a circular motion with neck bands, ribbing, things like that. And the curve foot. So the curve foot I'm finding turning up a lot in class, and students are using this as their basic foot. And don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic foot for when you're working with curves or when you're chain stitching or cover stitching and you're wanting to do sharp turns and curves with your work. It's not an advantage though if you're needing to use your differential feed. So the curve foot is too short to react fully with differential feed. And you'll see when it sits on the machine, it's just that little bit too short to work with the front feed teeth correctly. So if you're trying to do a gather, or if you've got a stretch fabric that's stretching and you're using your differential feed to combat that, the curve foot is just too short to work with. So for my favorite feet to work with would be either of these when I'm doing normal stitching, and I only use a curve foot when I'm actually wanting to stitch curves, circles, and get really creative on that chain and cover stitch side of the machine. Do hope that you found this tutorial beneficial, and it might just give you a little bit better result when you're gathering or sewing over bulky seams, and of course using the tape guides. Absolutely life-changing for stabilizing shoulder seams and working with narrow elastics. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Head over to my website, which is sewingtooverlocking.com. I have a blog there with photos of all the different feet. So if you get a little bit lost, you can always go there for reference too. So until I see you next time, happy overlocking.